Very
Yes.
huge.
Yeah.
Very huge.
Yeah.
So there's three questions I know I need to ask you.
Yes.
And then there's one you mentioned about the 1099. Now,
Okay.
NPs are always posting in Facebook groups about
Yes.
is it better to be a W-2 or a 1099?
Right.
Hit us with this knowledge bomb because it's really important.
Okay. So this is the short and sweet of it, okay? When you start working for a facility as an employee, then you are a W-2 person. They pay for part of the taxes, for Social Security, and some of those other things. They also give you benefits. Thus, your salary is, lower technically than what it would be if you're a 1099 contract worker. If you're a 1099 contract worker, you are not an employee of that facility. So you have your own company, basically. I started a PLLC, and then that's how I did all my income through, because then you have to pay your own taxes.
Mm-hmm.
So working with an accountant is extremely important if you're a 1099 worker. But you do, there's always the trade-off, the risks and benefits of each thing. The benefits to the W-2 is you have insurance, you have a job as an employee, and so there's certain regulations and rules that go with that. And then as the 1099 worker, you're your own person. And so, yeah, you can kind of get different, you can kind of mold like some of your employment towards what you think is best. So maybe you want to do 2 days a week at community mental health and 3 days a week at a nursing home. Fine, you can do that as a 1099. But, you won't have any benefits. So there's a huge difference there. And then you don't have, again, kind of the engagement of other employees, so other providers. And yeah, if you're in the facility, you might be able to kind of connect, but it is just a little different, because you are kind of calling some of your own shots with the 1099.
So then I would ask then two questions to follow up on that. As a new graduate nurse practitioner, what would you recommend going with?
So I started as a W-2, and I think that's a great way to start. Because as a new MP, you're going into a facility not knowing what to expect. I mean, luckily I had no expectations because I didn't have anything to compare it to. So my first job as an MP was, okay, so I followed the rules and followed the guidance of the supervisors and managers and things like that. Quickly do you see as an NP that having a supervisor that is not a provider is a problem. So, yes.
Okay.
So, because they don't have the same philosophies as you, nor do they prescribe medications, which is where a great amount of your liability comes from as a provider, is prescribing those medications, right? So if I'm working underneath a social worker or, some other type of mental health provider, and this is in no way any kind of diss against them at all. It's just solely the fact of when you are supervised by somebody that is not doing the same job as you, it can create some conflict. I was trying to manage patients in the best way that I thought I knew how as a provider, and so that doesn't align with psychotherapy always, because there's a different component to it, right? So when I kind of figured that out, I thought, some of this is kind of going against how I feel patients should be cared for.
Like your own value set.
Yeah, I don't feel like somebody should tell me what meds I can and can't prescribe if I'm legally allowed to in that state, okay? So I'm not talking about doing anything illegal or, outside of your scope. I'm just talking about, following your scope and how you want to provide services. And if that doesn't align with somebody who is kind of dictating your practice, that creates such great inner conflict I mean, because you're like, oh, now I feel like I'm beating my head against the wall,
Yeah.
and going to work is no longer passionate. I had the care for the patients, but I wanted something different. And so while I wasn't quite ready to go out on my own, I did want to have some level of freedom. And so then I said, okay, I'm going to do the 1099 then. I'm going
Got
to
it.
have the
Okay, so when
ability.
you that
Yes.
was a really good story to kind of draw that back in, right? When you want that flexibility and that freedom, go with the 1099. When you want
Yes.
that more stable security, go with the W-2. That
Yeah.
makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense, and I appreciate you sharing that. I try to make a note to make sure we segment that exact question.